to bring together the writers of Alien, the special effects magic of Stan Winston, and the promising up-and-coming director of Gary Sherman. And you've got a small-town horror tale, where the secrets of the unnatural are best left dead and buried. In the New England town of Potter's Bluff, a professional photographer encounters a beautiful girl on the beach who entices him. Choosing anonymity, she calls him Freddie, while he calls her Lisa. Yet the romantic encounter turns to terror when a group of townsfolk attack him, snap his photo, and ultimately set him on fire. Later that night, he is found by Sheriff Dan Gills in an upturned car, where he awaits the peculiar coroner William Dobbs. But more horrifying is that the severely burned man is not dead. The sheriff begins asking around town about the anonymous stranger, learning they checked into the local hotel at George Lemoyne. Yet the owner suggests that Dan's wife Jen has done business with him, to which he says she purchased photography equipment for the school. Yet this is disputed later on by the school's principal. At the same time, the bandaged up Freddy is confronted by Lisa as a nurse and kills him with an injection to the eye. Later on, a drunk town vagrant is also attacked and slashed up, with cameras documenting the assault. Then a small family stop in town for directions and gas, where Freddy, now without a scar on him, helps them out as a gas station attendant. Yet the family is led to an abandoned house where the same townsfolk stalk after them, but as they race away in their car, Sheriff Gills is halted by running into someone. Yet he is shocked by the moving arm lodged in his grill, and chases someone into the night, but loses them in the dark. When back at home, he discovers a book of witchcraft and voodooism with a bizarre dagger in his wife's drawers. While she explains the oddness away as a subject for her class, the mounting weirdness around him puts him on edge. The next day, that small family's car is dragged out from the shoreline, with no bodies found, but the sun shows up in Janet's classroom later on. Gills pulls skin fragments of the grill of the police car to be analyzed, which turns out to be weeks-old dead tissue, which the sheriff finds to be beyond comprehension. After a hitchhiker is also attacked, with her face bashed in, Dobbs does his elegant job of deconstructing and rebuilding the body to her former beauty. Yet after he departs the parlor, someone else enters as the hitchhiker rises back to life. Dobbs later reports the missing body to the sheriff, who begins suspecting more and more foul play, looking into Dobbs' own spotty background. Digging up George Lemoyne's grave reveals only a human heart buried within, which Janet taught in her class as a way to control the undead. Yet it is the secretive roll of film that Janet had him get developed that ultimately reveals the horror of his fellow townsfolk being complicit in murder, including his wife and Dobbs. When he confronts Dobbs, his necromancy is unveiled, revealing an obsession with crafting corpses into the ageless undead. But a far darker truth is yet to come that will horrify Sheriff Gillis to his very bones. So May 29th, 1981 saw the theatrical release of Dead and Buried, distributed by Avco Embassy, but apparently produced by a number of different companies that are kind of buying one another out throughout the course of production and post-production, which apparently caused a number of problems for the actual filmmakers here, but box office-wise, it really didn't perform. It grabbed $216,000 of a reported budget of $5 to $6 million. Didn't get anywhere. I don't know if the fact that it was just not pushed out enough theaters, even enough marketing campaign. Certain critics didn't really respond to the film very strongly to get much of a traction for it either, so kind of an odd type of thing, especially with Avco Embassy, because as a production company and distributor, they were responsible for some of the best genre hits at the time, like John Carpenter's The Fog, Escape from New York, Scanners, Prom Night, The Howling. A lot of great films in their catalog. This one they picked up for distribution just didn't get anywhere. But the development on the entire film kind of started off from Jim Miller, who was a comic strip writer, and Alex Stern developing the concept that gets picked up by Ron Shusett, He was very much well known at this point in time as one of the writers on Alien for Ridley Scott. And it was the entire thing where Shusett was very much the driving force behind the creativity of the entire project here, really pushing to develop the entire script, work on it mainly himself. And he kind of went off to Dan O'Bannon, his screenwriting partner on Alien, and trying to get him involved a little bit just to do a little script doctoring and stuff like that. And it was kind of an odd dichotomy. If you look at two different interviews from almost 20 years apart, there's an interview in Starburst magazine in 1983 where he's off kind of promoting his work on Blue Thunder at the time, and he kind of tells out the entire film. He says he hated the film. He kind of got pushed into putting his name on it, despite saying he didn't really get any of his ideas put into the actual film that he saw theatrically or anything like that. It was very negative of the entire film. But when you look on the interview he gave for the 2003 DVD set, much more positive. So he said he liked the film very much. He didn't see it. He said he didn't see it at the time it came out theatrically, and saw it many years later. So there's a bit of incongruity because he says in that interview, he very much liked the film. He saw it, he enjoyed it, and stuff like that. Doesn't really comment about so much of what he did to earn the credit because he was very much kind of averted towards the entire thing and putting his name on. Because from his word on that DVD interview, he just did a little script doctoring, not a whole lot of work. I mean, usually people do like little script doctoring type of things here and there. They don't kind of qualify when you're talking about like Writers Guild rules and stuff like that. But in this case, is the fact that after him and Shusett had just spent like a year battling with probably David Giler and Walter Hill on Alien to get their proper credit for their screenwriting on the film, as Giler went off and did a lot of rewriting along with Walter Hill. They want to make sure they got their credit, so it took a lot of effort to get on the whole thing. And so it was a whole thing where O'Bannon was kind of back and forth, but not really wanting to put his name on something that really didn't put that much effort into, put much of a stamp on it. But he kind of got swayed after enough sort of eroding of his resolve in that regard from Shusett to kind of put his name on, because you put both their names on it, the two guys who wrote one of the biggest horror films that come out in recent memory, it gets a lot more traction. You can market it better, you can pick it up better, all the type of stuff. So he kind of acquiesced the entire thing, but apparently on the DVD interview he was much more pleasing about how he thought about the film versus the 1983 interview with Starburst magazine. So a little bit of dichotomy. Maybe he warmed up to it later on, who knows, whatever. But as he's passed on now, we really can't get much more of a further context in the whole thing there. But the entire moving forward, the entire thing, as Shusett gets Bannon's name on the entire script, to market it, kind of sell it, get it up to certain people here to kind of finance it, get the Gurney Sherman, who's a guy I've covered numerous times on the show, because he later does films like Wanted Dead or Alive with Rutger Hauer. He does Poltergeist 3, which I fairly well like. Also does Vice Squad with Wings Hauser shortly thereafter. And previously before this, he did like a UK horror film. It went out very, very well. There's a lot of stuff that he'd already done a few things that got enough attention for certain people. Like, yeah, this guy's got some traction. He's got some good ideas. And he's got a handle on being a filmmaker here. So they get all these people kind of slotted into the entire thing here. And as the entire film is kind of set in Maine and the East Coast, they're actually shooting in like Northern California, Mendocino, California. So he kind of found a nice kind of spot here, which can kind of delve for that New England aesthetic. Certain small town feel to it, which has a lot of the fog and all the different things, very seaside type of a feel to it. There's a lot of atmosphere kind of built into it already. Apparently there's been like a couple of films that kind of gone up there, shoot some things every couple of years. And just like, it's kind of a nice community apparently in that regard. There's a very film-friendly community that kind of brings people in and gets some attention in that regard. So it kind of feeds their economy. So I feel like that'd be a very nice thing for a bit of a small town in Northern California to grab onto. And this wonderful location shot through the lens of cinematographer Stephen Poster, who previous to this found a production company with Michael Mann doing like commercial and educational films. Then after this starts working with Ridley Scott, shooting a lot of his commercial work, and his film Someone to Watch Over Me, which is just a gorgeous looking film. Just lovely type of stuff he does in the whole thing. Of course, Ridley Scott's films always look just so fantastic. And having a cinematographer who can get that vision on screen is definitely someone with a lot of skills. And later on, much later on, hooks up with Richard Kelly doing Donnie Darko, a bunch of other films with him. So this guy's got skills. This guy's got a lot of connections. This guy can really do a lot of good stuff. And that shows too in Dead and Buried. He does a really good job. Just again, what the environment gives you is one thing. It gives you the foggy atmosphere and all these different things. Of course, they're showing kind of very grainy film stock, so that gives another texture to the film. overall. And they got a very muted color palette here, so it's very much an overall sensibility of getting a very earthy, ethereal atmosphere here. Just like everything kind of comes together in that regard. Just like everything that's already there, naturally in location, is added on top of it by what they're doing with the environment to get a little more fog pumped in. Do things with very minimal lighting in some places. Like they have sometimes like just a couple of shafts of light here and there that just really add so much mood to what you're going off on. All these different sequences get you up on the edge of your seat when certain things are going off, and very much it's spooky. It's very much a spooky looking film and feeling how the film wraps you up in all the things it has to do in the entire film. Just like everything that poster does with Gary Sherman's direction here to make this film look so good. Even camera moves. I was very much impressed with a film like this where they kept saying like, well, we got a shoestring budget, but I don't know where the $5 to $6 million really comes in, if that's truly accurate. But they're doing a lot of good things here. There's like the camera moves they did in this whole thing really impressed me. It's like that's a sign of a couple of filmmakers who really have a seasoned quality of knowing what to do with the camera, how to move it through a space, how to use it dramatically, all these different things. Sometimes you get along very, very well, very fantastically with just like lockdown shots or very strong images in that regard. But having someone who knows when to move the camera and how to move it and all these different things really shows you a dramatic sensibility about how you want to use a space. It really shows you these guys really know their stuff and make the film look wonderful so much. And Gary Sherman does some really smart stuff. It starts with that really fantastic screenplay, but knowing Gary Sherman to play certain things out. Like the beginning of the film here, it's a wonderful misdirection. I love how the film kind of uses misdirection every so often. It plays a little bit of a game here and there, not being able to peer directly into where it's going. You're kind of left up in the air. It's like it's all very peculiar and strange how they have the entire opening, where it starts out very romantic with these two different characters. One comes up on the beach, the photographer, Freddie, as she calls him, and their entire kind of sweeping romanticism, the entire thing, and the music on the soundtrack is playing up this kind of sexiness and stuff like that, and it takes a turn, and it goes gruesome, and the fire, and all this type of stuff. It's great stuff, just like it's how the director moves the storyline. Apparently, it was too sunny that day, and so Gary Sherman had him kind of construct this sort of like diffusion tarp over the place where they're actually shooting to kind of keep that sort of like overcast atmosphere through the entire film here. So they did some really particular things to achieve certain aspects of the entire film, how they want things to feel, how they want the audience kind of move from beat to beat. As the mystery kind of threads its way through the entire story, you can't really see exactly where it's going. You're not really sure where all this horde of people were taking photographs of different people and killing them, what it's going to amount to. It's all very vague type of stuff, but it keeps you intrigued so much. And it's pushing forward with different parts of the narrative here to keep you hooked into the mystery. Because you got the sheriff of Dan Gillis here kind of going through the entire thing, trying to figure out what's at hand here. And you're kind of locked in with all this type of stuff. You've seen the actual actions go down and who's involved in the entire thing, but they kind of cleverly kind of move things along where they only reveal certain people in the horde after a certain point in time. Like Robert Englund's character in the film, who is in the film especially, it's not really revealed at the beginning of the entire thing. It's like a couple of sequences down the line, you start getting more and more the more familiar townsfolk integrated in these sequences to get more of a sort of scope of the entire thing of this small town here. So I like how the construction of the narrative is here. And so I like the fact that they keep the audience a little bit at bay. They can't let the audience get that far ahead. You're going to get a little information here and there, and some things you get more than the sheriff does, but you're not too far ahead to put it all together before he gets there. And complementing the film so much is a score from Joe Renzetti, who'd done some interesting work already. He did the Buddy Holly story before this, and scored the theme music for the John Carpenter Elvis TV movie starring Kurt Russell. In that regard, and then does The Exterminator, does a lot of other films with Gary Sherman, and scores Child's Play in 1988. So, good solid piece of work on this guy's regard. So, what he comes out in this entire film is a score that he kind of feels is something you feel more than you notice. One of those scores like kind of absorbs you into the atmosphere, the soundscape, all the different things they're doing with sound design in the entire film, especially in the new Dolby Atmos mix of the Blue Underground Blu-ray. Fabulous type of mix they put together in the whole thing, and just like this really good foreboding eerie score This has some deep, ominous tones to it. It's like there's so much really good sensibility, what it really kind of just swallows you up into the entire mood of the entire piece here. So, like I said, complements what they're doing with the visuals and everything else like that. Very, very well in this whole thing. It was included on the limited edition 4K set from Blue Underground recently, and it really looks like it's hard to find in that regard otherwise. There was a vinyl release that's very scarce to come by in the couple sites I looked on, and I can't quite determine if it's really on digital or whatnot. Kind of come up in a Spotify search, but it didn't really seem like I could actually go ahead and play it. So I am really kind of dodgy on that thing. I checked Apple Music, iTunes, YouTube Music, didn't come up anywhere. So a little hard to come by. So if you did get that limited edition 4K set, you've got the score to check out for your own self on the CD, including the whole thing. But they put together a really good cast in this entire thing. Like I said, very interesting, like small players. Robert Englund, we know, I mean, who needs to give an introduction to Robert Englund? But in 1981, he kind of did. He wasn't anyone really of note in that regard, but I love Robert so much. It's like when you watch the interview he did for the entire DVD set, the guy's such a great talker. He talks so much about books and film and stage and stuff like that. The guy really gets himself out there and kind of absorbs so much of art in that regard. So he was so enthusiastic working with a lot of different people in the thing, like Jack Albertson, a lot of the people in the whole thing. He had kind of a thing for Lisa Blount, who plays Lisa in the entire film. And just like there's a lot of people in the film, he just had a really good time on this entire thing and really just thought very well of a lot of different people in the entire thing. Like a lot of people went off to a couple bigger things in their careers after this and had such a great experience doing the entire film. But James Farentino, this guy was a phenomenal performance in the entire film here, and he'd done like the film The Final Countdown. We're doing a lot of TV work like Dynasty, TV version of Blue Thunder, coincidentally enough, and a lot of guest spots on ER, being the father of Doug Ross. So like this guy had a lot of stuff going on later on in his career, but this film, I'm blown away by what he does. Throughout the entire course of the entire film as Sheriff Dan Gillis driving the story here. There's so much about what he does here that keeps the momentum going because he's investigating the mysteries here, finding out what's going on with the burnt body, who this guy is, where he came from, and coming up with all these little mysteries to kind of tie into his wife. And various other things are kind of off with a coroner there and stuff like that. All these little things wrap him around, and he's trying to get his head around what exactly is going on around here. It's all very interesting, creepy, proposal type of stuff that he's kind of driving himself through the entire narrative here, trying to figure out whether or not he's going crazy about certain things and what exactly is going on here and there and everywhere, and trying to understand what's happening and finding deeper and deeper, weirder things going on in the entire thing that keep just making you question exactly what the hell's happening here. So I like so much how that happens. Again, how the narrative goes along where you never get ahead of where he is. You've got some other information he doesn't quite have yet, but you're not further closer to the actual revelation of the story here. You're just as perplexed as he is, trying to figure out where all the pieces fit together and what he does. Like when he's working with his wife, Melody Anderson, in the entire film. I love the entire interaction they have there because sometimes there's a little conflict. He's kind of accusing her at certain points in time, and she kind of throws it back at him. And various other things. And there's certain points where the weight of all this type of stuff just hanging on him so much, like the despair and the sort of weariness of what's going on here. It's like, probably as a sheriff, hasn't seen a lot of this stuff before. And he just can't put it together what's going on here. Because it doesn't fit with this entire community and stuff like that. So what he knows of what's going on here doesn't make any sense to him. So like it's all the stuff weighing on. There's murders going on and all this different stuff, and none of it fits together. It's all a wide mystery that he can't get the pieces together, and he has to keep turning towards the people he thought he could trust. And it builds up this paranoia in his head. And kind of looks sideways at different people here and all these different things. It's like it's just really damn good performance here. Like it's the writing, but you get an actor who just fills it out so much. He's so good with the swagger, the charisma. All the stuff he has here, it's like there's such a physicality in his performance so much. When he throws himself into certain points in time, it's all just aces to me. He's so damn good. That's the thing that just like bore into me when I was watching this the first time. Guy is so good. He's just phenomenal in this performance here. It's just like, it's great. And I had the kind of things like, he's got a bit of a Treat Williams vibe to him. He kind of has a look to him that's similar to Treat Williams. I feel like 15 years after this, Treat Williams would have slotted into this just exactly the same way. And it's a good thing to say because Treat Williams was a fantastic actor as well. Farentino actually passed away in 2012. And apparently there was some things where he had a number of scrapes with the law in various situations that seemed a little weird in certain ways, but regardless, in terms of an actor putting forth talent on screen, you couldn't have found a better guy for it because he just delivers it in spades in this role. So much in that regard. And Jack Albertson here playing a corner character of William Dobbs. This guy was such a big star of stage and screen. He was in Beside Adventure, he was in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. This guy had a lot of great things. He had a Tony Award to his name. All these different things. Like, he was just celebrated so much. And kind of the last film he ever did because he was suffering from cancer at the time they were filming this, and you could not tell. He puts in such a classy, elegant performance. He's so into it, this character. He's got all these interesting quirks to him that makes him just a great character for anyone to play. Because he's got this, I love the big band aesthetic he has here. It's like he's so soaked into the music and stuff like that. It's like even when he pulls up to the crime scene, it's like, oh, wait a minute, Sheriff, I gotta wait for the last note to go off the song and whatnot. It's like, he's so wonderful about the entire thing, and he does up the bodies with the music playing in the background. It just creates so much character overall, and he's so good with character here. It's such a wonderful piece of work that I like the fact that this guy's got this ego about himself, that he's kind of flaunting himself about what he does. He feels like he's such a great artist of what he does, and he's kind of gotten creepily obsessed with what he does. And I like the fact that the film kind of plays him a little bit back and forth. You kind of tip yourself off that, like, he's a little peculiar, a little suspect at certain points in time, but it kind of weaves you back and forth. You're not sure if he's complicit with what's going on, or there's something else more underhanded going on beyond him. It's interesting how it flows together, and he plays it every note so beautifully. Such graceful type of stuff he does. All over the place, playing Dobbs. It looks like he's having so much fun playing up all these different aspects of the character here. And such a lush performance he puts on. And him and Farentino, the scenes they have together are just fantastic. All the stuff they do, it's just, again, it's like playing a symphony in that regard. These guys are just so wonderful in what they're putting together on screen. And Melody Anderson, who had just come off of Flash Gordon, and ended up doing a lot of stuff in TV, like the regular stuff, your Dallases, your TJ Hookers, Mandible. Great stuff. Just she does a great job as Janet Gillis. Like I said, she's got this really good way of playing a little duplicity, a little subtleties of certain things going on, because she kind of throws, like I said before, when husband's throwing it at her, she kind of throws it back at him and just kind of swerve the story back around here and there. And when you see her in the actual classroom, and she's kind of following through on this entire thing where he found the book of witchcraft and voodooism and the weird sort of dagger and everything, like, it's spooking him out. Of course it's going to spook him out. I was like, what's my wife doing with this shit? And she's in the entire classroom playing it up. And she's so very good at the whole thing. And just like everything she does, I mean, every step of the way, when she gets something really substantive to play, when you're getting up, I'm going to talk about the climax in its own type of thing in that regard, but she's getting up to different points of the entire film. She just plays something so wonderful on screen. It's like there's so much richness in what people are doing with the script here. And through Gary Sherman's direction, everyone plays so many different things. Like there's, again, like I said, there's a lot of bit players. A lot of people just got a couple lines, but they kind of slot into the community so very well and fill out the story in the right ways. Everything comes out so very well to cast. Just such a really good piece of work in putting this entire acting performance from every single person in the film. It's really exceptionally well done. And talking about expertly well done, Stan Winston handling the bulk of the physical effects in the film. This film just shows the mastery he had, because this is before he had his own studio. He had one assistant on the film, and that was it. Everything else was done with his own hands, designing everything. A lot of puppet work. Like the entire thing with the guy who gets burned alive. The first one, when they find him in the upturned car, that's a puppet. When they got him wrapped up in the bandages. the entire scene is a puppet. When they get the entire needle to the eye, of course, it's a puppet. They can put that through the actual actor. But all the different things, like, oh man, he just excelled so much. Like, the guy had the skills for days. Like we already know him from all the big budget stuff later on, but getting this entire smaller film when he doesn't have a lot of resources, but he has the skills and the knowledge and the determination to make sure every single thing comes off absolutely perfectly. There is an exception, not with his work, but because you had a lot of stuff with this sort of production company shell game going on with the entire thing, where one entity is buying out another and things are shifting around and whatnot. Apparently there's a lot of stuff in terms of like interference in that regard, where they're kind of giving them notes to kind of reshuffle scenes and then add other scenes to kind of up the kind of gore quotient to a certain degree. So 2 kill scenes were actually added. One with the drunk sort of townsfolk guy wandering around to get slashed up, stuff like that. That was still Stan Winston's work. But the later sequence that got added was when they kind of go off and encounter the doctor who did all this sort of like testing for the severed arm fragments that got caught up in the sheriff's grill. The effect when they're actually burning him out with the acid is actually not Stan Winston's work, because he was no longer available by the time they actually shot that sequence. So the other effects team stepped in from some other people, and it didn't do quite as good of a job, because one, Gary Sherman originally wanted to be able to do the entire thing in one shot. So the entire thing where the entire head is kind of oozing out and doing different things, they tried to construct it that way, but apparently because the head wasn't that good, Gary Sherman in post decides to try to like do a bunch of cutaways and stuff like that to kind of break it up, so you're not quite looking at it for as long as possible, because it just doesn't hold up to that kind of scrutiny. And so apparently that effects team was a little bit upset, because, well, we could have done it more in like stages and done it where we're not doing it all in one shot. Maybe could have done it a little bit better than they did, but it definitely shows so much what Stan Winston's work is so good. It was something like that stands out so badly in the film against all the other effects are so marvelous that some of them, like I said, the guy wrapped in bandages, you never would have thought, just watch the film, that was a puppet going off. It feels like you just wrapped a guy up and did little stuff here and there and whatnot, but man, it is so good. And the best sequence of the film is when you have Dobbs making up the one hitchhiker that got smashed in the face. An entire sequence it's actually Stan Winston, not Jack Albertson, doing the entire thing with the hands making up the body. The entire thing is Stan Winston, because it had to be done very meticulously to be done right, and putting all the things in the right places, especially later on when they changed the angle to more the profile shot, and he's putting the eyes in the sockets. Because so much the entire thing, when they pan the shot up to actually Jack Albertson and they go back down, they've actually done a switch between the puppet to the actual actress. And you can't even tell. There's not a shadow that happens, not a glimmer of light that moves across anything. It's absolutely perfect what to do here. To get this puppet that looks exactly like the actress, after you've already seen the gaping eyes and the eyeballs being put into it, and you do a little switcheroo without any kind of telltale signs, and the actress comes to life after a minute or so, and it's just phenomenal. Just like Stan Winston was so pleased by that work, even 20 years after the fact, he was so very much so happy about how that turned out, because there was a lot of work he put into it himself. It wasn't a team, it was himself doing all the little things to get every single phase of that sort of mock-up of the entire character there. It's so good. It's such great work. Of course, when you get the craggy skin and all the different things going on, it's such wonderful work from him. It just further solidifies just how good Stan Winston was at this stuff, and the fact that he would get better and better and better, and the more resources he got, the better his stuff just excelled beyond reason. It's such great work he does in the entire film. Phenomenal stuff overall. And like I said, with the entire sort of production companies of sorts kind of having a little bit of an interference and kind of reshuffling certain things and kind of changing some tones in certain ways, because apparently the word is that Gary Sherman wanted to kind of go a little bit for a dark comedy vibe in some places, and they kind of pulled that away. Because a couple of like money shots that they had really got chopped down. They didn't really last very long in the entire film. And there's certain things like they kind of reshuffled the sequence of certain like horror sequences. Like the entire thing with the hitchhiker who gets her face bashed in was supposed to happen before the trio family, where the mother, the father, and the son get kind of cornered in the entire abandoned house and stuff like that. That was supposed to happen in a different sequence of events to a certain degree. So certain things got jumbled around to a certain degree, and some aversion to how that kind of went down or whatnot. But Gary Sherman still feels very strongly about the film, very positive about the entire film. A lot of people did. Definitely, if you get the most recent remastered version from Blue Underground, there's some very good behind the scenes commentary and stuff like that on the whole thing, where they show a lot of behind the scenes footage and kind of talk about certain things that happen on set in some ways. And then some other things like there's a really good positive vibe in retrospect of the entire film, despite some things maybe going a little awkward or whatnot in terms of like how things got dealt with in that regard. And of course, the release strategy really failed in a lot of different ways in that regard. But there's a lot of good things in this entire film when you're talking about getting up to the climax, because Lord Almighty, just the revelations you have going off the entire thing, and how the entire sheriff kind of barges in on Dobbs, is in the mortuary, and everything starts to unravel, and you're starting to see that he's used certain secrets. He says he loses like black magic or medical discovery or whatnot. He's taking his secrets to the grave, and he's not really going to tell exactly what it is. I kind of like that. You don't really need to explain things out at the last minute and kind of have people latch onto a more elaborate concept that maybe doesn't quite entirely fit with the entire vibe of the film. Kind of keep a little vagaries, a little ambiguity or whatnot, but say there's certain things that he kind of dabbled in to a certain degree, because you already start out with like the wife having the witchcraft, the voodooism type of thing, so it's laid in there. You got a little mysticism kind of touched on in some places, so it's enough. It's enough to not tell you everything about what's going on here. It's enough to have a concept and a little tinge towards something you have in the background of what's happening here without having to explain the whole thing. But the performances of just Albertson and Farentino just go over the hill here. They're magnificent. They're just so excellent. Just the execution, the entire climax is so great. It's some of the stuff I like what Gary Sherman is like. He's such an ambitious filmmaker at this point in time. He really just went for it. He had great ideas, great ways of executing things. Guillermo del Toro is a big fan of this film. You go over the trails from hell. He did a commentary over the trail for this, and he loved this film so much that he stuck in the theater to actually see it. Oh, something like that is endorsing it so much. He's such a great fan of Gary Sherman and his type of work in that regard, and just you can see it so much. Why someone like Guillermo del Toro would love a film like this. Just like there's so much great ambition and artistry and vision going on with the whole thing. Just like in this sequence, where you just have the projectors going off, just a great visual design so much. It just creates so much energy and so much flair for the entire thing. So much of theatricality in it. And it kind of brings all the stuff together where you had all the hordes of people taking the photographs and the cameras and stuff like that. It all weaves around and comes together. It makes sense in that regard, because if he is going along and trying to reconstruct these people in sort of a mad scientist type of way, he needs to have sort of documented proof of what they look like before they kind of maim them. So it can make sense. They're taking film and they're taking photographs and stuff like that here and there. So it fits what we're doing here. Well, it's all very reverse engineered, it seems. How you go from the end and kind of stretch threads back through the entire story here, and they all come together at the end very much logically in that regard. And I just like so much what you get, just the emotion, the anguish, everything like that. When you got the sheriff, he just intensified so much in the entire thing. His performance is so goddamn good here. It's so amplified to such a degree that just like you're just so wrenched up with all the twisted up emotions you have going on with this whole thing. It's like he's like, God damn, what the hell is going on here? I love it so much. And when you get off the cemetery and all the different people come up and they're all craggy and stuff like that, and just it's dawning on them, the entire town has just been transformed in this whole thing, and it gets out to such a great Twilight Zone-esque ending. It's such a great thing. It's such a meshing of like EC Comics and Twilight Zone And various other little things, like it's a fusion of different feelings and influence and stuff like that. And it all comes together because everyone in the entire film has great artistry and great vision of what they're doing here. And they're so committed to what they are doing. It's such a great, great piece of work. I had this thing recommended to me like years and years ago, but no one really wanted to spoil anything. So they said very minimal stuff about it. So it didn't really get me over the hill to actually watch it. And I finally, it's been on Peacock for years now. Since Peacock started, this film's been up there. And I've sat on it for years now. And I finally sat down and watched it. Like, this thing's good. This thing's like really goddamn good. Like, again, the performances are just stellar. Just, oh my God, they're so good. But you get it when you start learning about the behind the scenes, what Stan Winston did with the makeup and all the different stuff he did, and learning about more and more about who's involved in the film and all these different things, just the richness of everyone talking about what this film was, the talent involved, and all the different things, you just appreciate so much more as you quickly go through what this film really did, what it achieved for itself and its artistry and execution, and just having all the right people involved in the right places. Aside from that second effects scene that kind of slid off the edge of certain things here, but in regards to that, everyone else just did a phenomenal job in my opinion. I think it's a really damn good film. Just watching it again, I just watched it like a month ago up on Peacock. I grabbed the disc and I watched it again. It's like it holds up. It's just very compelling storytelling. What they do here to kind of just read the mystery with the horror and different things. Couple of little things. I do feel like when you get up the entire thing with the little family there and they kind of go up in the abandoned house, it gets silly for just a moment there. Like as they start getting, the hordes are starting to congregate in the entire house, kind of close in on whatnot. They start going upstairs. Like every door they walk into is like, it's almost like a fun house. You open up the door, oh, there's a guy with a knife. Over here, there's a guy with a gun or something else. Like it felt a little silly. It just a tad silly for just a moment there. It just felt like it was a little straining credibility. Like everyone's just kind of staged in the house to jump out at the right points in time. So it does feel like you're going through a carnival in that regard. But everything else, it's really well done. Cinematography, wonderful. Gary Sherman's direction shows so much what like Gary Sherman when I watch like Wanted Dead Alive. I appreciate Poltergeist 3 for despite the fact it has a number of flaws. Something's a little less than great in that whole thing, but I still think there's a lot of ambition behind what he does. Vice Squad, sleazy as hell, but it's such a classic in that sort of LA sleaze genre. Guy delivers. Guy has a lot of stuff in his back pocket that he pulls out and just punches so very strongly with what he can deliver on screen. I very much appreciate him. Like the fact that I've covered this third film from him, I've covered, and I have good things to say about him every single time I talk about him. Special stuff in that regard. So everything. Definitely say, guys, go check this out. Absolutely, positively. It's one of those things, like, because it was such a non-hit at the box office, it was very much like a cult thing on the VHS end, and maybe the couple of things on cable, whatnot, very slowly crept its way up. And I think it's really, it's just one of those things I don't like. It just doesn't get trigger into the conversation of whenever you're talking about anything. It's such a unique film. Like, it doesn't slot as easily into anything. Yeah, it's a little bit of an undead film, a little bit of a zombie film, but it's not like a Romero zombie film. Not like that type of archetype. And so many different things in that regard. It's like, it's such an interesting film, and it has little elements of different things here. It's such a unique film in that regard. So it doesn't really slot into like a subgenre category or whatnot to really discuss in that regard, but it's such a really good piece of work that I definitely recommend you guys check out. I'm not going to say much more, but I've said enough. Hopefully that motivates you guys to actually check this one out. If you have checked it out, I want to hear you guys feel about the entire film. If you've known about it for much longer than I have, definitely talk about it so much. So much about this film really impressed the hell out of me, guys. So if you liked the video, thumbs up is definitely appreciated. Of course, subscribing if you haven't, the comments, the likes, the shares, everything like that. Super Things featured contribute something to the channel directly, also Patreon as well, and stuff like that, guys. So it's been interesting forever. Horror Month, Pumpkinhead, Silence of the Lambs, and commentaries for George Romero films, all that type of stuff, and ending here for the time being for Dead and Buried. So guys, thanks so much. Take care.